Welcome to the Anime Audiophile Podcast. Enjoy. Itachi Shinden, Book of Dark Night. Chapter 6 Part 4. Itachi carefully took his shoes off in the entryway. His mission that day would seriously change his life. He wouldn't be taking his shoes off here anymore. The peaceful times would also end that day. That's fine. He was prepared to bear the weight of the crime. Itachi. Sasuke stopped Itachi as he was about to step up into the house with an almost innocent cry, as if to keep him here in this house, in this clan. Itachi decided to stay just a little longer in this peaceful place. Once he took that step forward, he would never be able to come back here. He moved his feet back into the entryway and turned toward his brother. "Help me with my shuriken today, please," a request he would never be able to grant again. If he was honest with himself, all he wanted to do was help Sasuke forever and ever. He had prayed for the day when his little brother would become a full-fledged ninja and they would go on missions together. That, too, was a wish that could no longer be granted. Struggling for a reply, he managed to give voice to a polite lie. "I'm busy. Why don't you ask father? But you're better at shuriken. Even I can tell that." His brother pouted, arms crossed behind his back and hanging slightly. Now that Itachi thought about it, he had used being busy as a pretext to distance himself from his brother. He wished he had spent more time with him, but what was done was done. "Why do you always treat me like I'm such a pest?" No. That's what he wanted to say. But that was a word he definitely could not give voice to, because soon his little brother would hate him for the rest of his life. Still silent, Itachi beckoned with his hand. Not suspicious in the slightest, Sasuke trotted over. As if to check that force, Itachi jabbed him in the forehead with his index and middle fingers. "Sorry, Sasuke. Maybe next time." "Oh." His little brother pursed his lips and puffed out his cheeks, and Itachi saw that his forehead was just a bit red. When he was little, it had hurt Sasuke so much when Itachi poked him. His little brother was growing up, a fact that almost pained him. If he stayed there like that, he wouldn't be able to get up again. Steeling himself, Itachi took a step with heavy feet. And then, without looking at his little brother, he said, "I don't have time for this. You always say sorry, Sasuke, and jab me in the forehead. And you never have time. It's always the same story." Itachi left his grumpy brother and opened the front door. "Sorry, Sasuke," he apologized from the bottom of his heart the moment he crossed the threshold. "The cliff where I promised Shisui." 6 hours had already passed with him sitting on the edge in contemplation. No matter how he chased his thoughts off, the ideas that appeared one after another would not go away. Moments from the 12 years of his life flickered into existence and disappeared, and flickered again. Memories of his boyhood when all he wanted was to get stronger. Days fighting as a ninja, troubled by the conflict between his comrades and his brethren. And the many bonds that dragged him into the darkness. Beyond good and evil, beyond emotion, his memories became confused and washed away his thoughts like a muddy stream. Itachi could only give himself over to the torrent. It was too late for regret now. Still, it wasn't as though his feelings were crystal clear either. The karma Itachi would be burdened with was not something simple that could easily be reasoned away. It was something that went beyond preparation, worry, hesitation, determination, all of it. Which was why Itachi himself couldn't predict what kind of person he would be once that day was over. The only thing he knew for certain was that this day, today, would indeed end, and that when it did, everyone in the clan other than his little brother would be dead. Almost like how everyone knew that the day of their own death would come at some point. Itachi took a deep breath and let it out slowly. Through his slightly open eyelids, light the color of sunset shone into a field of view blanketed by long eyelashes. It was almost time. The preparations had already all been made. Once Itachi moved, Madara would also move. There was no one other than the people of the clan in the compound that day. It was a clever bit of work from Danzo and the Foundation. And dressed as that work was in the disguise of chance, no one noticed Danzo's trickery. And it wasn't just one trick. First, the early return of the military police force. Starting that evening, contractors were coming in to build the new facilities for the headquarters, so an order was issued by the village for the police to go home early. Naturally, this was a fake order devised by Danzo. But dead men tell no tales. If everyone involved were dead, then there would be no one to say a fake order had been issued. And for the police, who had a coup d'etat the next day to consider, getting to go home early was a nice turn of events. And the final trick. That was to make his brother return home late. That day, a teacher at the academy would be training with him in shuriken. This teacher was a fake, a member of the foundation. In a disguise so clever Sasuke, who was not yet even a genin, would never be able to see through it. The foundation ninja would deceive him. The table was set so that all Itachi had to do was head toward the compound. "All right, I'm going," Itachi announced to empty space as he stood up. He saw a vision of Shisui before him. It would all end that day. The fate of the Uchiha clan and Itachi's peaceful life. Itachi held his breath and listened to the bright voices from across the hall. The room illuminated by the flickering glow was the dining room. The voices were those of two women. He knew one of them very well. The other was her mother. He kicked the garbage can at his feet and deliberately made some noise. "What was that?" the voice he knew asked the mother. "I don't know." "I'll go look, all right?" Tension crept into her voice as she announced this to her mother, and then her aura slowly approached Itachi. So that she wouldn't sense him, he ran down the hallway and hid in the room next door. And then, once he judged that her aura had passed by him, he slipped into the dining room, and before the mother had a chance to shout upon noticing him, he knocked her out with the Sharingan. Once he had soundlessly put her to sleep, he waited silently for the aura to return. "Mom, it was just the garbage." Having gotten this far, Uchiha Izumi stopped herself. "Itachi?" Glancing over at her mother on the floor, Izumi stared dumbfounded, not understanding what was going on. He couldn't stand to listen to Izumi's voice any further. He concentrated his chakra in his eye. The Mangekyo Sharingan. Tsukuyami. Izumi froze in place. Itachi focused his thoughts on his own Jinjutsu. Tsukuyami allowed him to completely control time, space, and matter. It was a power he had gained when he activated the Mangekyo Sharingan. The time that passed within this Jinjutsu was 1/100th of 1/1000th of 1/1,000,000th of that of the real world. Itachi drew out a clear image. Peace in the village of Konoha, the clan tranquil. His own form, free from all trouble. And Izumi beside him, smiling. Izumi becomes a Chunin, as if chasing after him. At that time, Itachi is already a Jonin. He hands up pouting Izumi an engagement ring. Izumi retiring as a ninja. Marriage. Childbirth. Child-rearing. The children setting out. Izumi growing old together with Itachi. 70 years since they met. The hair on both of their heads is white. Izumi's illness. He takes care of her. Her last years. The Mangekyo Sharingan consumed an enormous amount of chakra, and so placed an equivalent burden on the user. Shoulders rising, Itachi took a deep breath, as if crawling up from the depths of the ocean. Before him, Izumi's knees gave out under her, and she collapsed, smiling. Sliding over, Itachi held her up, tightly gripping her slender shoulders. "Thank you." Izumi's voice sounded like that of an old woman past 80 years of age. "Me, too. Thank you." He squeezed her shoulders more tightly, and could say nothing more. With a broad smile on her face, Izumi took her last peaceful breath. The mind and the body were indivisible. If the mind decays, the body also falls apart. Izumi died, joyful. After gently laying the now motionless Izumi down on the floor, Itachi staggered to his feet. The intense expenditure of chakra made his body shake. I decided that Izumi would be first. By killing her himself, he wiped away the last of his hesitation, the hesitation born of unfinished business with the clan of bonds of emotion. Thank you, Izumi. Itachi slowly turned around. There lay her mother, knocked unconscious by the Sharingan. When he stepped out of Izumi's house and onto the road, the space behind him abruptly shimmered. So you've begun? Madara said evenly. Itachi didn't look back over his shoulder at the man, but simply felt his aura. The blanket of dusk was starting to fall in the sky before him. The evening star that heralded the coming of night looked excessively bright. I will take care of the women and children as far as possible. Madara's concern annoyed Itachi. I'll take the west side of the compound, you're the east. We do this just like we planned from the start. Don't push yourself, Madara said. Shut up. You're still young. If you take on too much darkness, it will break you. I've already been broken for a long time. Itachi swallowed the words that popped into his head and turned around to look at Madara. There was no way to know what emotion was on that face, covered as it was by a mask. His body, cloaked in a black coat that reached his shins, exuded a sinister chakra that resembled bloodlust. You don't need to worry about me. I'm not worried. It's a natural arrangement to properly execute our mission. Don't patronize me. It's precisely because I think so highly of you that I do not want you to expend excessive effort. My role, given my ability to use time and space in jutsu, should be to take on the women and children who will cry and shout and run about. I do think that will prioritize efficiency. They had to finish everything before Sasuke returned to the compound. He didn't have time to glare at Madara here. Whatever you want. I'll see you again once it's all over, Madara said, and disappeared into empty space. Itachi took a small breath. Close your eyes. He moved forward in the darkness, seeking a new target. Inabe's wife died before she even understood what was happening. Shaking off the blood that with the blade of his sword, Itachi turned his eyes to his gasping target, Inabe. Do you understand what you're doing? Inabe shot off foolishly. Without replying, Itachi slowly closed the distance between them. With each step he took, Inabe retreated. How about you just prepare yourself, Itachi suggested gently, and Inabe shook his head from side to side. What are you afraid of? It's only the inevitable coming to you now. TR traitor. You all always distance yourself from everything like that. And that's why you're about to be killed by me, like this. He kicked powerfully at the floor. The distance between them closed. Inabe tried to his signs. Fire style. Too late. Before the flames could gush out of his pointed lips, Inabe lost his own head. Itachi put his hand on the front door. Inside the now quiet house, only one chakra shimmered. At the end of the hallway. There was an aura in the room at the very end of the hallway. He put his hand on the sliding door. Who's there? He heard the voice from inside the room and slid the door open. You? The man was sitting upright, grim look on the face that stared at Itachi. The black spot on his forehead was unmistakably Tekka's. Chakra is shaking all over the compound. So you're the culprit, Itachi? Even among the Uchiha, Tekka was a leading Sharingan user, and his ability to sense chakra was excellent. It wasn't at all strange that he had shrewdly grasped that some calamity had befallen the village. You're here. So why does chakra still shake elsewhere? This isn't the time to be worrying about that. I see. Why didn't you move if you sensed something strange in the village? You got here before I could. That's all. Tekka moved to stand up. Knife in hand, Itachi stepped in close. The man rose up and caught Itachi in his gaze. Sharingan. Without flinching, Itachi squarely accepted the surge of chakra emitted by Tekka's eyes. What shock crept onto the face of his target. He appeared surprised that his visual jutsu didn't work. And then, in the next instant, he saw the pattern in Itachi's eyes, and the look on his face changed to one of chagrin. I am possible. Mangekyo. Tekka's stomach swallowed Itachi's blade. He thrust it in deeply, all the way to the hilt guard. No blood gushed out, not with the sword still in place. Their faces were so close that their noses were almost touching. You all have the bad habit of underestimating your opponent's abilities. Itachi, blood flowed out from between Tekka's clenched teeth. As Itachi leapt back, he yanked his sword free. An ocean of blood with the tatami mats, he was not caught by even a drop of splashback. Right hand thrust up, clawing at empty space, Tekka collapsed. They won't forgive you, Itachi. Those were Tekka's last words. Itachi turned his back on the body and sheathed his sword. I wasn't asking for forgiveness. In the single room of the one-person apartment, there wasn't even a bed. The small room didn't have the feel of having been lived in at all. A man sat with his back against one wall. Just hurry up and kill me, team leader. From his careless manner of speaking, Itachi knew the man blanketed in darkness was Mezu. Anyone who looked at him would only see Uchiha Kage. Itachi dragged heavy feet to stand in front of him. You don't kill me, and everything you've done so far will be meaningless. Nothing to get hung up on, just hurry up and finish me off. Are you alright with that? I've been ready for it since the time Lord Danzo took us in. A sad smile spread across Mezu's face, formerly Kagen's. And a little brother, you always want to be useful to your big brother, you know? Itachi plunged his blade into the chest of the still smiling Mezu, without so much as flinching. It had already been an hour since he put Izumi to sleep. He had murdered too many of his brethren to count, but Itachi still kept running. His heart had long since frozen over. He had also forgotten to keep in mind that it was all for the sake of the village. He simply continued to single-mindedly swing his sword. The target's father and mother, and then his wife. When the boy, old enough to have just started at the academy, stopped moving, he heard a shriek behind him. The voice was familiar. The man fled down the hallway, the sound of his feet almost exaggeratedly loud. He jumped down into the entryway and ripped open the door. Itachi went after him. He came out onto the road. The man looked awkward in flight. His throat stiff with fear, perhaps he didn't even scream. Although there was already no one else left in the area. He could cry out all he wanted, but no one would hear him. The man slipped through a stone gate on the edge of the road. Beyond it was a park. Playground equipment was set out on the square site. The man pushed past the swings so desperately, it was almost pitiable. He had made it to the center of the open space when he fell headfirst. Itachi stood a sword length ahead of him, looking down on the man as he tried to find his feet. Give up. The man's white hair shook at Itachi's cool words. Yashiro. Killing me won't solve anything, you know. There's another leader. Even Lord Fugaku doesn't know about him. I was being controlled. Even now, at this late stage, you're still trying to hide in someone else's shadow? You have to believe me. I was just trying to do what he wanted. He's the one who... Yashiro's eyes grew wide and froze on a spot behind Itachi. Why you? Been a while, HM? Although I guess I did just see you 2 days ago, Yashiro began trembling, eyes still fixed on Madara. Why? Madara laughed, exasperated at the childish question. Don't call me for this sort of trivial thing, Itachi. They had decided in advance on a way to join up in an emergency. If Itachi kept an image of Madara in mind and emitted chakra, Madara would use his space-time ninjutsu and appear before him. Sorry, but I chose Itachi. That's all, Madara said smoothly, and it appeared that Yashiro, still gaping up at him, had lost the will to say anything further. Well, it's probably no use, but you should try to resist as best you can. Hold on, I'll leave the rest to you. I'm going to keep working, Madara said to Itachi, and disappeared once more into thin air. The feeling when something you believed was absolute is made to crumble. Do you understand it a little too, now? Oh. Because of these men, Shisui had despaired for the clan, lost everything, and died. I hope this at least can be comfort to you, Itachi said to his friend. So, what are you going to do? He asked, thinking it was pointless to ask, even as he waited for Yashiro's answer. If Yashiro were the kind of man who would acknowledge his own crimes, he wouldn't struggle so vainly like this. I really do understand how you feel. We'll call off the coup d'etat. As so, please, begging for your life? Please. Itachi. Uchiha Itachi, Yashiro was beyond pathetic. He was conceited enough to think he could stop the coup at his own discretion. If he hadn't been spurred on by Madara, the clan might have been able to go down a different path. When Itachi thought about this, a desire to kill so powerful it was strange even to him rose up in his heart. Stand up, Itachi's voice was emotionless, and Yashiro looked up at him, opening his narrow eyes as wide as possible. You're a ninja. How about standing up and fighting? Yashiro said nothing. Have you forgotten your pride? Trying to somehow rein in his fear, Yashiro yanked himself to his feet, shaking his head all the while. Don't underestimate me. Show, don't tell. How about you just come at me already? Itachi said flatly, while before him, Yashiro's eyes shone red. Not moving to defend himself, Itachi looked straight at the Sharingan. Yashiro's chakra became a spider's thread called visual jutsu, and raced into Itachi's body. Fire style, Yashiro shouted, took a very deep breath, and puffed out his cheeks. He panicked when nothing but air came out. What happened to the fire? Huh? Yashiro cried out in honest surprise. Itachi watched coolly. You make my movements dull with the Sharingan, and release great fireball technique. Because you probably anticipate that I'll leap out of the way, you bring me down in that defenseless moment with a kunai or something. Once you get the drop on me, now it's time for close combat, so you use your Sharingan one more time and get one step ahead. That's about it, right? He took a step toward Yashiro, who was rooted to the spot. Being good at getting along in the world and being good at being a ninja are two totally different things. Ah. Unable to produce words, Yashiro simply stood still and waited for the approaching Itachi. Your brain was so controlled by fear that you didn't even realize you were caught in my visual jutsu when you fell. Hearing this, Yashiro became aware for the first time that Itachi's eyes were colored crimson. I told you to fight so you could truly feel your own powerlessness. Ah. Saliva drooled out of Yashiro's open mouth. You misjudged me to the bone. Itachi's Sharingan changed. Mangekyo. Tsukuyami. The second Mangekyo Sharingan of that night invited Yashiro into an unnatural darkness. Crucified on a cross standing in the center of a dark ocean, he whirled his head around in confusion. The surface of the dark water rose up at points all over, and these gradually took on human form. Infinite Itachis. In their hands, they gripped ninja swords. This is a world I control, Itachi murmured, his hand stretching out toward Yashiro. Gah! His blade plunged into Yashiro's stomach. The Itachi who thrust it disappeared into the dark ocean. I won't let you die so easily. One blade after the next pierced Yashiro's body. He became a silver hedgehog and went limp, motionless. As Itachi returned to the ocean, the swords disappeared from Yashiro's body. A look of relief rose up onto his face until a herd of Itachis once more blanketed his field of view. The real pain starts now. Yashiro's stiff face was transformed into a smile that was already beyond terror. Over a span of time that wasn't even a few seconds in the real world, the two faced each other silently. That moment would have seemed like several days to Yashiro. In the Jinjutsu space produced by the Mangekyo Sharingan, swords were endlessly plunged into his body, over and over. By the time he was released to the real world, Yashiro's mind was destroyed. D-Death. DDD, Yashiro trembled and grinned. Itachi looked down on him as he slowly drew his sword. Yashiro was already beyond the capacity to hear his voice, and Itachi had nothing he could say to him at this stage. His sword flashed mercilessly, and the pitiful man's head flew up into the moonlit sky. Itachi returned to the area near the entrance to the compound. There was just one family in the Uchiha compound left alive. Only Uchiha Fugaku's family. Sasuke would be back soon. Although he felt the pressure to hurry, Itachi turned the feet that should have returned him to his house toward the entrance to the compound. He squatted on top of an electrical pole and looked down at the world. He could clearly see the compound's large front gates from there. Behind them, the moon was full, almost frighteningly large. Devoid of any sense of people, the town was wrapped in silence. He could hear a crow cawing off in the distance. The melancholy echo called up the image of a raven separated from its group, drifting. Someone slipped through the front gates. A boy carrying a bag on his shoulder. His beloved younger brother. I should have talked so much more with him, Itachi thought, as he watched his brother running below him. He had so many things he wanted to say. Exactly how much of it would he be able to tell his little brother? One or two, no, he couldn't tell him a single thing about the truth. In amongst all the uncountable words in his heart, Itachi felt there was just one thing that he absolutely had to tell his brother. Locking away in his heart the feelings he could not give voice to, Itachi flew toward his own house, leaving his little brother racing along the road home. There were two auras in the room. As if lured by them, Itachi walked down the familiar hallway without taking his shoes off. Immediately after opening the door, he saw the figures of his parents sitting together. He stood behind them soundlessly. I see. So you sided with them, his father said in a controlled voice, without turning around. In his voice was a philosophical tone, as though he had understood everything. Dad, Itachi was surprised at himself for automatically calling his father that. He had called him father since the time he graduated from the academy. It was a distinction he drew for himself as a full-fledged ninja. And then, that name had gradually become natural, and he forgot even that he had ever called him Dad. Why would he use that old way of referring to his father now? When I was little. Back then, when there weren't the obligations of the clan, the contradiction of the village, the loneliness, the discouragement, back when his feelings about his family could be simple, might have been the happiest time in Itachi's life. And now that the parting with his family was before him, he was yearning for those old days. Mom, we understand, Itachi. Her voice was kind, understanding everything, and still trying to envelop him in a hug. Itachi, his father said. Promise me one thing. His voice was straightforward, containing not a hint of resentment. Take care of Sasuke. They both understand everything. He felt it instinctively, and the feelings he had suppressed since parting with Izumi bubbled back to life. His father and mother understood everything, how much Itachi had suffered and struggled, and also the fact that this had most certainly not been an easy decision. On top of that, they were going to quietly accept the fate that had befallen them. His father hadn't the slightest intention of crossing blades with his son. And if his father had turned his sword on him, his mother would have given her own life to protect Itachi. The love they felt for the son who was about to kill them radiated from them. Why didn't I realize it sooner? Why did it have to come to this? He had decided that he would not regret anything. He was supposed to have readied himself, and yet the figures of his mother and father pained Itachi's heart so much he could hardly stand it. I will. Tears spilled out of his eyes, and wet his cheeks. The hand holding his ninja sword shook. Don't be afraid. This is the path you decided on. In the back of Itachi's mind, the conversation he had with his father right after he joined the Yambu, their first in a long time, came back to life. You should stay true to your thinking. Fight, be confused, be lost, and come through that to find your answer. And once you find it, make your decision, and do not waver from it. Find your answer, and be ready to follow through. That is determination. Determination. Yes. There are few people in this world who live their lives with their own determination. They leave their decisions to others and avert their eyes from responsibility. You must not live like that, at least. Move forward in your life, making your own decisions. This was the difficult, painful path he had decided on. He must not be afraid. That had been his father's teaching. Compared with you, our pain will end in an instant. His father was faced with death, and yet was thinking about the life his son would lead after this. It was as though he were trying to teach Itachi with his own life just what love was. Maybe I was too hasty, his father admonished himself. I should have believed in you more. Perhaps I should have believed in you, got the clan in check, and waited. Dad? His voice was shaking with his tears. His mother and father had probably noticed that he was crying. The tears were the first he ever let anyone else see. You might have been the first Uchiha Hokage. You could have wiped away even the darkness of the clan, broken through the prejudice of the village, and forged a destiny with your own power. His father cut himself off. Itachi could tell from his shaking back that he was trying to get his emotions under control. I stole your future from you. Itachi couldn't find anything to say in response. Or rather, if he said anything, his feelings would break completely free. But it's too late for anything now. His father took a deep breath through his nose. Even if we think differently, I'm proud of you. My father's pride. He had wanted to hear those words out in the sunlight. How happy would he have been to be wearing the Hokage's hat in front of the people of the village and hear that from his proudly smiling father. Another dream that won't come true now. He couldn't waste any more time. His little brother was coming home. He thrust the sword into his mother's back. A jolt of intense pain raced through Itachi's heart. Pulling the sword out, he turned the tip toward his father. You're actually such a gentle child. He lowered his head and leaned into his father, as if to press his face to that broad back. Almost like a child begging for a piggyback ride. Now that he thought about it, his father had never spoiled him like that. Itachi had never been selfish and troubled him, and he had never been spoiled or cried either. If only I had spent more time with him. Tears spilled endlessly from Itachi's eyes. Without mercy, they continued to wet the hand clutching the sword. The slight vibrations that were coming to him through the blade stopped completely. Once he felt that his father's life had ended, he slowly pulled out his sword. Even at a time like this, he was thinking about blood spattering. He hated the Itachi that had the mindset of the ninja dyed into the marrow of his bones. His hand wouldn't stop shaking, but he managed to somehow get the sword back in its sheath. One final job was left. Itachi wiped away his tears and waited for the moment. End of part 4. Thank you for listening. Remember to like and subscribe for lots more.